the Americans were hopeful that we could negotiate a bigger deal. Okay, I mean, there is so much that we do together, where our economies are integrated, they graft off of each other, and those types of things. Whether it's on trade, whether it's energy, whether it's automotive, whether it's nuclear defense, and all of those types of things. We were hoping that we would not just renegotiate CUSMA, but that we could take it into being something much bigger. It's obvious, at least at this point in time, that that's not going to happen. I think in the next, in the coming days, maybe coming hours, you will see that our Federal Register the federal government has to put in notices and those types of things. There will be a notification that companies and other interested parties on the U.S. side can start funneling comments into the federal government as we begin a lengthy process of reviewing CUSMA and identifying what what a revised CUSMA will look like. But I think at one point in time, there was a hope that it could have been a bigger agreement.
For months, Canadian officials had been telling the public that negotiations with Washington were ongoing. Talks are happening, they insisted. Progress is being made. Canadians were told to stay patient, that deals take time. But behind the curtain, there was almost nothing. Washington had already slapped heavy tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, citing so-called national security risks. Ottawa tried to spin this as the start of a serious negotiation. But in reality, the Americans weren't budging. And then came the moment that ripped the mask off. Standing at a podium, the U.S. ambassador delivered a crushing statement. There would be no deal with Canada. Not now, not later. No talks, no compromises, no room to maneuver. The door was shut. For Ottawa, it was a punch to the gut. For ordinary Canadians, it felt like the rug had been pulled out from under them. But deep down, many probably saw it coming. Washington's patience had run out. And when Donald Trump draws a line, he doesn't step back over it. This decision wasn't just symbolic. It carried immediate pain. Canadian manufacturers suddenly faced an uphill battle. Export orders dried up overnight. Energy producers struggled with new costs to move their products. And for ordinary families, the impact hit in the most familiar places: grocery stores, gas pumps, and kitchen tables. Think of it like this: your morning cup of coffee. For years, that bag of beans cost around $12. Now, it's $18. Did Brazil suddenly raise the price of beans? Number. Did Canadian roasters suddenly triple their profit margin? Not at all. The difference is that an American company now pays a 50% tariff when importing those beans, and that cost gets passed all the way down the line, right to the shelf in Canada. It wasn't just coffee. It was steel, aluminum, automobiles, everyday consumer goods. Tariffs don't just squeeze companies. They squeeze families. And when families are already struggling under high mortgages, climbing energy bills, and relentless grocery prices, that extra squeeze is more than inconvenient. It's unbearable. Some households were already making tough choices: cutting vacations, pulling kids out of extracurricular activities, canceling family outings, just to make ends meet. The pain wasn't theoretical. It was real. And for many Canadians, this wasn't just economics. It was personal. While Canadians felt blindsided, the Americans presented it as business as usual. Trump himself framed the situation with his usual bluntness. He claimed the U.S. subsidizes Canada to the tune of $200 billion every year. He said Canada relies on America 95% of the time, while the US relies on Canada just 4%. His message was clear. Canada needs us, not the other way around. And then came the line that really stung north of the border. Trump suggested Canada should be treated like the 51st state. For Canadians, that wasn't just an insult. It was a humiliation. But here's the uncomfortable reality. Trump's framing struck a nerve because it carried an element of truth. America does hold the stronger hand. Washington can afford to walk away. Ottawa can't. And that's exactly why Trump looked firm, decisive, and in control, while Canadian leaders looked cornered, defensive, and weak. The reaction in Canada was furious. Social media exploded with outrage. One critic said, "Look in the mirror. The problem isn't Canada. It's the way America is treating us." Another wrote bluntly, "You can't kick the dog and then blame it for growling." Anti-American sentiment, already simmering for years, roared back to life. Canadians began voting with their wallets. Cross-border travel declined. Sales of U.S. alcohol brands dropped. Book sales from Canadian authors went up. Exports to the U.S. shrank by billions. Everyday people were making quiet choices, resisting American products wherever they could. But while the public was fuming, Ottawa seemed frozen. Mark Carney, Canada's top economic figure, launched into damage control mode. He began pitching new trade deals with anyone willing to listen. Mexico, Europe, Asia. He promised new liquefied natural gas projects, rushed port expansions in Montreal, and fast-tracked supply chain alternatives. On paper, it looked bold. In reality, it looked desperate. Because diversification is smart, yes, but it isn't something you can rush overnight. Building new global supply chains takes years, sometimes decades. Canada was trying to sprint a marathon, and it showed. Every announcement, every press conference, every promise sounded less like confidence and more like panic. Ottawa was scrambling, while Washington was dictating the terms. And the truth is, none of these flashy moves changed the immediate reality. Canada's biggest partner was still the United States, and America had just slammed the door in their face. Here's the most chilling part. This no-deal moment, it was just the warm-up. The real battle, the renegotiation of USMCA, is set for next year. And the stakes are 10 times higher. This time, tariffs won't just be the opening move. Washington will drive a hard bargain, and Canada will be forced into choices it may not like or can't afford. And if Ottawa struggled this badly with a relatively small clash, how will it survive when the big game begins? That's the question haunting industries, investors, and households alike. At its core, this moment isn't just about steel, lumber, or tariffs. It's about credibility. It's about sovereignty. Canada is at a crossroads. On one path, adapt, diversify, and find real independence, though it may be painful and slow. On the other path, sink deeper into crisis, locked into a position of weakness against a far stronger neighbor. And while Ottawa spins press releases about new opportunities, Canadians see the contrast clearly. South of the border, Trump commands the stage. He dictates terms, sets the rules, and sticks to them. North of the border, Carney appears defensive, stumbling, and reactive. For ordinary Canadians, that contrast is more than frustrating. It's alarming. So here we are. The U.S. looks strong, Canada looks desperate, and unless something changes soon, that gap will only widen. But this story isn't finished. The showdown to come, the USMCA renegotiations, will be far more brutal, far more consequential. The question is simple. When that moment comes, will Canada rise to the challenge or collapse under the weight of America's pressure? That's the reality unfolding right now. What do you think? Can Canada actually chart its own path forward? Or has Washington already locked them into a corner? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm curious to hear what you think about this showdown. And if you found this breakdown insightful, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share, because the story between Canada and the US is only just beginning.